What makes a great war movie? War movies are often understandably brutal, but devastating endings effectively capturing the futility and the bleak brutality of war are what we are looking for. Some of the greatest war movies of all time feature the darkest endings. These films are not for the faint of heart and depict war crimes with alarming accuracy. 1987's Full Metal Jacket is a movie of two halves. The first act of Kubrick's clinical Vietnam movie occurs in a boot camp, where R. Lee Ermey's relentless drill instructor wages a psychological war against Vincent D'Onofrio's Private Pile.
What is that, Private Pile?
Sir, jelly donuts, sir!
A jelly donut?
This ends with Pyle turning his rifle on the instructor and himself, after which the surviving troops are sent to Vietnam. There, most of the squadron is wiped out by an unseen sniper. The sniper that killed out most of the squad, an unnamed little girl. Full Metal Jacket's protagonist Joker Mercy kills her before leading the troops in a sing-along of Mickey Mouse March. If you haven't seen it, it's haunting to say the least. Director Oliver Stone's Platoon is one of the most realistic war movies ever, and that's thanks to the Helmers' experience during the Vietnam War. For most of its runtime, Platoon follows the internal divisions in a squad of soldiers fighting in Vietnam. Eventually, both the outright villainous and comparatively naive troops are killed in an onslaught. This sequence ends with Charlie Sheen's Chris able to return home thanks to his 2 injuries. He breaks down as he's airlifted off of the battlefield, staring down at mountains of bloody corpses. 1988's Grave of the Fireflies is rare in the realm of war cinema because it's animated. But do not be mistaken, this is a far cry from what would be considered a typical animated film. Based on the short story by Akiyuki Nisaka, Grave of the Fireflies tells the story of 2 young orphans traveling across Japan. Attempting to survive the last weeks of World War II, Seita and Setsuko fantasize about a time when they will be able to eat and live in relative comfort again. Grievously, that time never comes, as both of them suffer the same fate as so many children did throughout World War II. Grave of the Fireflies ends when both heroic kids die of starvation. The 2022 remake of All Quiet on the Western Front follows every war movie's playbook for much of its runtime. There's camaraderie among the likable troops, talk of life after the war, and desperate attempts to survive the melee of conflict. However, All Quiet on the Western Front proves that there is no glory in war during its final act. One by one, every major character dies in the twilight of this tragedy. All Quiet on the Western Front's Albert dies while trying to surrender. Another commits suicide after seeing the extent of his injuries. Meanwhile, another meets the business end of a bayonet and then dies from his wounds. There are no happy endings in this. The defense of Brest Fortress was a tremendously significant event in the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. A surprise attack, the Nazi invasion cost the German side an unanticipated number of casualties as Soviet troops bravely defended their territory. The attack was one of the earliest instances of Russia's military humiliating the Nazis and badly damaging Germany's war machine. However, any triumphant element of this history is nowhere to be seen in 2010's The Brest Fortress. A Russian-Belarusian co-production, The Brest Fortress ends with Nazi forces killing all of the historical siege's remaining heroes. 2015's Son of Saul is one of the rare few movies that can manage to make the history of Schindler's List look like the littlest elf. An intense tragedy, the Son of Saul sees a Jewish concentration camp prisoner attempt to locate a rabbi who will help him bury a dead child. Most of Son of Saul's runtime is dedicated to Saul's nail-biting search and the many close calls his odyssey entails. However, in the end, it's all for nothing. The child's corpse never gets a Jewish burial and is lost in the river. The rabbi is a fraud, and Saul is killed by the barbaric Nazi guards. Released in 1981, Gallipoli stars Mark Lee and Mel Gibson as 2 Australian sprinters who join the army in search of glory. Instead, the 2 are met with the brutally grim realities of war. It takes Archie and Frank most of the runtime to even reach the battlefield. The pair go through misadventures just getting there, only to die as soon as they enter the war, with Gallipoli's closing moments depicting Archie and Frank howling in agony as they are shot to death. Apocalypse Now famously used a trippy imagery to bring the horror of war to life on screen, but this is not Apocalypse Now, because that classic is nowhere near as strange and startling as Come and See. A 1985 Soviet movie, Come and See tells the story of the young, idealistic Fliora. His quiet, countryside life is torn asunder when invading Nazis destroy his home village. The Nazis are thankfully captured and shot, and their corpses are burnt as the despondent Fliora marches off with his comrades in Come and See's crushing closing scene. Paths of Glory follows Kirk Douglas playing Dax, a commanding officer defending his unit of French troops from cowardice charges that leads to a drawn-out power play that in the end proves pointless. Despite Dax's persistent defense of the 3 accused soldiers, they are executed, proving his effort futile. The final scene of Paths of Glory has Dax's remaining soldiers drinking at an inn, knowing that they will return to the front the next day. He leaves them drinking. 1969's Play Dirty was director Andre de Toth's attempt to redress the heroic narrative popularized by the Dirty Dozen. This war movie also sees a crew of cynical convicts unite against the German army, but its story has no idealistic glitz or glamour. The crew blows up the German fuel depot, leaving all but 2 caught and killed in the process. The 2 survivors come across British officers, but they are still disguised as Germans, and so they're shot dead before they can surrender and explain. Even among war movies, Play Dirty is notable for its realistic, bleak depiction of war. Time after time, we, as a species, start slinging arrows and bombs at ourselves, and over time it comes as second nature to dampen the surreal horror of our habitual self-flagellation. So we must commend movies like these that awaken us from our self-deception.